the Buddha's most powerful life lesson. Life is a journey filled with suffering, joy, and the constant search for meaning. Among the many spiritual figures who have sought to answer life's most profound questions, Gautama Buddha stands as a beacon of wisdom. His teachings have endured for over 2,500 years, guiding millions toward inner peace and enlightenment. Among his many teachings, one lesson stands out as the most powerful, a lesson that, when truly understood and applied, has the potential to transform lives. This lesson is rooted in the core of Buddhism and can be summed up as: the root of suffering is attachment. This profound insight into human suffering is not just a philosophical idea, it is a practical truth that, when realized, can lead to a life of deep peace and freedom. In this article, we will explore the depth of this lesson, its implications, and how to integrate it into daily life. The nature of attachment and suffering. Buddha taught that life is inherently filled with dukkha, suffering. This suffering does not arise randomly but is caused by craving, desire, and attachment to things that are impermanent. We cling to relationships, possessions, identities, and even ideas, believing that they define us or bring us happiness. However, everything in life is subject to impermanence, anicca. When we attach ourselves to impermanent things, we set ourselves up for inevitable pain. For example, attachment to people, relationships change, people leave or pass away. Attachment to material things, wealth and possessions are fleeting. Attachment to identity, our sense of self is constantly evolving. Attachment to expectations, reality often does not align with our desires. By recognizing this, we begin to see that much of our suffering comes from holding on to things that are beyond our control. The path to liberation, letting go. Understanding attachment is the first step, learning to let go is the path to true freedom. The Buddha introduced the Noble Eightfold Path as a guide to reducing suffering and attaining enlightenment. Among its principles, the practice of right mindfulness, samma-sati, and right concentration, samma-samadhi, helps us develop a deeper awareness of our attachments and how they affect us. Here are some practical ways to apply this lesson in daily life. 1. Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us observe our emotions, desires, and attachments without being controlled by them. By staying present, we become aware of how our minds cling to certain outcomes. Mindfulness is not just about meditation, it is about cultivating a way of life that promotes awareness and intentional living. When we practice mindfulness, we develop the ability to observe our thoughts and emotions without immediate reaction. This allows us to respond to situations with clarity rather than being driven by habitual patterns of attachment and aversion. One of the most effective ways to practice mindfulness is through breath awareness. The simple act of focusing on our breath anchors us in the present moment. Whenever our mind begins to wander, whether to regrets of the past or anxieties about the future, we gently bring our attention back to the breath. This practice trains us to let go of unnecessary worries and embrace the present with acceptance. Another powerful mindfulness technique is body scanning, where we bring awareness to different parts of our body and notice any tension or discomfort. This helps us recognize how emotional attachments manifest physically. By releasing physical tension, we also begin to let go of emotional burdens. In our daily lives, mindfulness can be applied to everything we do. Mindful eating, instead of rushing through meals, we savor each bite, appreciating the nourishment it provides. Mindful walking, paying attention to each step, feeling the ground beneath us, and being present in the experience. Mindful listening, truly hearing what others are saying without formulating our response before they finish. Mindful working, focusing on tasks without distractions, bringing full attention to our work. When we integrate mindfulness into our lives, we become less reactive and more intentional. We begin to notice how attachments arise, whether it's the craving for success, the fear of failure, or the desire for approval. Instead of letting these attachments dictate our emotions, we acknowledge them, observe them, and then let them pass like clouds in the sky. Practicing mindfulness does not mean suppressing emotions. Rather, it means recognizing emotions as they arise and understanding their transient nature. If we feel sadness, anger, or disappointment, we acknowledge those feelings without letting them control us. We ask ourselves, what is the root of this emotion? Am I clinging to an expectation or resisting reality? By doing so, we gain insight into our inner world and cultivate greater emotional balance. Ultimately, mindfulness leads us to the realization that happiness is not found in external conditions but in our inner state of being. When we stop attaching our well-being to fleeting circumstances, we unlock the potential for lasting peace and fulfillment. 2. Accept impermanence. Meditate on the reality of anicca, everything is constantly changing. When we accept that change is inevitable, we become less fearful of loss and more appreciative of the present moment. Impermanence is a fundamental truth of existence. The seasons change, our bodies age, relationships evolve, and nothing remains static. By resisting change, we create suffering for ourselves. The more we try to hold on to something, the more pain we experience when it inevitably shifts or disappears. One way to cultivate acceptance of impermanence is through contemplative meditation. Reflect on the transient nature of life, how even the most joyous moments pass, just as sorrow does. This practice allows us to embrace change with an open heart rather than fear. Impermanence also teaches us to value the present moment. When we fully accept that nothing lasts forever, we begin to appreciate life more deeply. We cherish our loved ones, find beauty in fleeting experiences, and let go of trivial concerns that once consumed us. Additionally, accepting impermanence encourages us to detach from rigid identities. We often define ourselves by our achievements, possessions, or status. However, these things are impermanent. True peace comes when we recognize that our worth is not tied to external factors but to our inner state of being. When faced with loss, whether it's the end of a relationship, the passing of a loved one, or a major life change, reminding ourselves of impermanence helps us move forward. Instead of resisting reality, we learn to flow with it, embracing the cycle of life with grace and resilience. By embracing impermanence, we cultivate a deep sense of inner peace. We stop clinging to what is temporary and open ourselves to the natural rhythm of existence. This realization allows us to live more freely, love more deeply, and experience life with greater clarity and acceptance. 3. Detach with love. Detachment does not mean indifference. We can still love, enjoy, and engage with the world but without excessive attachment. Love should be freeing, not possessive. Many people misunderstand detachment, believing it to be a cold or distant approach to life. However, true detachment allows us to love more deeply because it frees us from the fear of loss and expectations. When we cling to others out of attachment, we impose conditions on love. I need you to make me happy, I can't live without you, you must always be here. These attachments lead to suffering because they are based on control and dependency rather than genuine care. Loving without attachment means allowing people to be who they are instead of trying to change them. Appreciating relationships in the present rather than fearing their end. Understanding that love is about giving, not possessing. A practical example is parenting. A mindful parent loves their child deeply but understands that the child is an independent being with their own journey. They guide and nurture but do not attempt to control or dictate the child's entire life. This is love without attachment, supportive, compassionate, and freeing. Detachment in love also helps us navigate heartbreak and loss. When we realize that nothing lasts forever, we can cherish relationships without being devastated when they change or end. Instead of resisting reality, we embrace it, allowing love to exist without fear. In daily life, practicing detachment with love means expressing gratitude for the time we have with people instead of worrying about how long it will last. Letting go of unrealistic expectations in relationships and friendships. Loving ourselves first, recognizing that our happiness should not depend on external factors. Giving freely without expecting anything in return. Ultimately, detachment with love allows us to experience deeper connections, free from the burdens of fear and neediness. It transforms our relationships into sources of joy rather than suffering. 4. Cultivate gratitude. Rather than clinging to what we don't have or fearing loss, focus on gratitude for the present moment. This shifts our mindset from craving to contentment. Gratitude is a transformative practice that reorients our minds from scarcity to abundance. When we focus on what we lack, we create suffering through endless craving. However, by cultivating gratitude, we shift our awareness to the blessings that already exist in our lives. Gratitude can be practiced in many ways. Daily reflection. Every morning or evening, take a few moments to reflect on 3 things you are grateful for. This could be as simple as the warmth of the sun, the kindness of a stranger, or a meaningful conversation. Mindful appreciation. Throughout the day, pause to truly appreciate the things around you, your breath, the food you eat, the presence of loved ones. Gratitude journaling. Writing down what you're thankful for deepens your awareness and helps train your mind to see the positives. Gratitude also helps us accept life's imperfections. Instead of dwelling on what didn't go as planned, we learn to find lessons and growth in every experience. This shift in mindset leads to greater emotional resilience, inner peace, and overall happiness. When we stop chasing after what we don't have and instead cultivate gratitude for what is already present, we break free from the cycle of endless desire and dissatisfaction. Gratitude turns the ordinary into extraordinary and allows us to experience life with more joy and fulfillment. 5. Reflect on death. Marana Sati. Remembering the impermanence of life puts things in perspective. When we realize that life is short, we stop wasting energy on attachments that only lead to suffering. Meditating on death, also known as Marana Sati, is a powerful practice that awakens us to the preciousness of life. It reminds us that our time is limited and that every moment is an opportunity to live meaningfully. Many fear thinking about death, but in Buddhist philosophy, contemplating mortality is not morbid, it is liberating. When we accept that death is inevitable, we shift our focus from trivial concerns to what truly matters. We begin to live with greater intention, letting go of grudges, material obsessions, and unnecessary worries. Instead of fearing loss, we cherish our experiences, relationships, and the present moment more deeply. One practical way to cultivate Marana Sati is to reflect daily. If today were my last day, how would I live? This question brings clarity to our priorities and helps us make wiser choices. We stop procrastinating on love, kindness, and personal growth. By integrating the awareness of death into our lives, we break free from attachment, live with gratitude, and embrace each moment with wisdom and peace. Real-life applications, stories and lessons. Many spiritual seekers and even ordinary individuals have found profound transformation by embracing this lesson. Here are a few inspiring examples. The story of Kisa Gotami beautifully illustrates the Buddha's teaching on attachment, suffering, and impermanence. It reminds us that no one is exempt from loss, and that clinging to what is transient only prolongs our suffering. When we release our grip on fleeting desires, we discover a deeper peace, one that is independent of external circumstances. The key is to cultivate awareness, accept impermanence, and embrace life with an open heart. So, ask yourself, what are you holding on to that is causing you suffering? How can you start practicing detachment in a healthy way today? By applying this wisdom, we not only enrich our own lives but also contribute to a world with more. The story of Kisa Gotami. One of the most poignant illustrations of the Buddha's teaching on attachment and suffering is the story of Kisa Gotami. Kisa Gotami was a young woman who lived during the time of the Buddha. She was a devoted wife and later became a mother to a beautiful baby boy. Her happiness, however, was short-lived. Tragedy struck when her beloved child fell ill and passed away suddenly. Overcome with grief, Kisa Gotami refused to accept the reality of his death. She clung to the hope that her son could somehow be revived. In her desperation, she carried the lifeless body of her child from house to house, pleading with anyone who would listen, begging for medicine that could bring him back to life. People pitied her but knew there was nothing they could do. Finally, a wise man suggested she visit the Buddha, saying, "Only the enlightened one can help you." Filled with hope, Kisa Gotami rushed to the Buddha, laid her child at his feet, and implored him to save her son. The Buddha looked at her with deep compassion and gently said, "I can help you, but first, you must bring me a mustard seed from a household that has never experienced death." Clinging to this last shred of hope, Kisa Gotami set out on her quest. She knocked on every door in the village, asking for a mustard seed. Many were willing to give her what she sought, but when she asked if they had ever lost a loved one, the answer was always the same: "Yes, we have." Every house had experienced death, loss, and suffering. As the day went on, the realization slowly dawned on her. She was not alone in her suffering. Every family, every person, had lost someone they loved. Death was not a punishment or an exception, it was a universal truth. With this newfound understanding, she returned to the Buddha, her heart lighter, her mind clearer. The Buddha spoke gently to her, "You are not alone in your sorrow. Death is a part of life, and no one can escape it. When we cling to what is impermanent, we only deepen our suffering. Let go, and you will find peace." At that moment, Kisa Gotami accepted the truth of impermanence. She laid her child's body to rest and asked the Buddha to guide her on the path to enlightenment. She became one of his devoted disciples, dedicating her life to the pursuit of wisdom and compassion. The story of Kisa Gotami is a powerful reminder that suffering is universal, and attachment to what is impermanent only leads to greater pain. By recognizing that life is fleeting and embracing impermanence, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering and learn to cherish the present moment with gratitude and clarity. The nature of attachment and suffering. Buddha taught that life is inherently filled with dukkha, suffering. This suffering does not arise randomly but is caused by craving, desire, and attachment to things that are impermanent. We cling to relationships, possessions, identities, and even ideas, believing that they define us or bring us happiness. However, everything in life is subject to impermanence, anicca. When we attach ourselves to impermanent things, we set ourselves up for inevitable pain. For example, attachment to people, relationships change, people leave or pass away. Attachment to material things, wealth and possessions are fleeting. Attachment to identity, our sense of self is constantly evolving. Attachment to expectations, reality often does not align with our desires. By recognizing this, we begin to see that much of our suffering comes from holding on to things that are beyond our control. Peace, love, and understanding. Folded hands, may you walk the path of wisdom and find true freedom. Folded hands. Steve Jobs and Buddhist influence. Apple co-founder Steve Jobs was deeply influenced by Zen Buddhism. His experiences with Buddhism shaped his philosophy on life, work, and innovation, allowing him to approach challenges with clarity, simplicity, and detachment. Simplicity and minimalism. Jobs' fascination with Zen led him to embrace simplicity in both design and lifestyle. He believed that eliminating the unnecessary allowed for greater focus on what truly mattered. This principle became the foundation of Apple's design philosophy, products that were sleek, intuitive, and free of clutter. The idea of less is more aligns perfectly with Buddhist teachings. Just as detachment from material desires leads to inner peace, Jobs applied this concept to technology, creating products that eliminated excess and prioritized user experience. Detachment from ego and fear of failure. One of Jobs' greatest strengths was his ability to detach from failure and success alike. He was famously fired from Apple, the company he co-founded, in 1985. Instead of being consumed by bitterness, he took this setback as an opportunity to learn and grow. In Buddhism, suffering arises when we cling to identity and external validation. Jobs' ability to detach from his ego allowed him to reinvent himself. He founded Next and Pixar, both of which thrived. Eventually, Apple brought him back, and under his leadership, the company transformed into one of the most influential brands in the world. Jobs understood that clinging to past successes or fearing failure stifles creativity. He encouraged his team to embrace uncertainty and take risks, embodying the Buddhist principle of non-attachment. Living with awareness of mortality. Steve Jobs often reflected on the impermanence of life. In his famous Stanford commencement speech in 2005, he shared how being diagnosed with cancer changed his perspective. "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important." This awareness mirrors the Buddhist practice of Maranasati, mindfulness of death, which teaches that contemplating mortality helps us prioritize what truly matters. By accepting death, Jobs was able to live fearlessly and follow his intuition without being shackled by societal expectations. Innovation through present moment focus. Zen Buddhism emphasizes being fully present. Jobs applied this principle not only in his personal life but also in how Apple approached technology. He believed in focusing on the now, ensuring that every Apple product was the best it could be at that moment rather than being driven by fear of competition. His philosophy aligns with mindfulness, a core Buddhist practice that encourages total engagement in the present rather than being lost in regrets of the past or anxieties about the future. Modern minimalism movement. In an age of excess, many are embracing minimalism, a lifestyle rooted in simplicity, mindfulness, and detachment from materialism. This shift aligns with Buddhist teachings on non-attachment, emphasizing that true happiness comes from within, not external possessions. Minimalism challenges the belief that accumulation leads to fulfillment. Many who pursue wealth and status find themselves overwhelmed, stressed, and dissatisfied. Minimalism offers an alternative: less clutter, more clarity, fewer distractions, deeper fulfillment. Buddhist influence on minimalism. Buddhism teaches that letting go of cravings leads to peace. The practice of renunciation, nekkhamma, encourages releasing unnecessary desires, mirroring the minimalist approach of focusing on essentials and eliminating excess. Minimalists recognize that every possession carries a mental cost, maintenance, attachment, and potential stress. By reducing these burdens, they create more space for relationships, creativity, and mindfulness. The benefits of minimalism. Minimalism promotes less stress. A decluttered space fosters a clear mind. Greater focus, fewer distractions enhance productivity. More gratitude, appreciating what we have, rather than chasing more. Emotional resilience, detachment from material things fosters inner stability. Practical steps to minimalist living. 1. Declutter with purpose, keep only what adds true value. 2. Prioritize experiences, invest in memories over material goods. 3. Limit digital clutter, reduce screen time and unnecessary consumption. 4. Practice mindful spending, buy intentionally, not impulsively. 5. Embrace contentment, find joy in simplicity, not accumulation. Minimalism as a path to inner freedom. By simplifying life, we cultivate clarity, gratitude, and peace. As Buddha taught, attachment leads to suffering. When we let go, we experience freedom. Minimalism is more than a trend, it is a practice of living intentionally, appreciating the present, and finding happiness within. Conclusion: living the Buddha's most powerful lesson. Buddha's insight that the root of suffering is attachment is a timeless truth. It teaches us that freedom comes not from acquiring more but from letting go. When we release our grip on fleeting desires, we discover a deeper peace, one that is independent of external circumstances. The key is to cultivate awareness, accept impermanence, and embrace life with an open heart. So, ask yourself, what are you holding on to that is causing you suffering? How can you start practicing detachment in a healthy way today? By applying this wisdom, we not only enrich our own lives but also contribute to a world with more peace, love, and understanding. Folded hands, may you walk the path of wisdom and find true freedom. Folded hands.